Have you ever wondered why salespeople selling the same thing, same price points to the same prospects using the same script get completely different results? Well, if you have, watch this over here. So there are 5 types of tonality that you have to commit to mastering if you want to be a top 1% salesperson for what you sell. Write these down. These are writer downers. Number 1, you have to master what's called a curious tone. Okay? Now, a curious tone triggers the prospect to feel like you are actually curious about what you're asking. And this is one thing you need to understand. Your tone is how the prospect, okay, interprets, might be spelling this wrong, your intention behind everything you say and ask here. So that's how they interpret why you're asking the question in the first place, right? So this is something you're going to have to master. So a curious tone might be, let's say if I sold business consulting. Okay, so walk me through. What are you guys doing now to really really build out systems to scale the company? That might be a question that I might use to find out their situation, and I'm going to ask that in more of a curious tone. The curious tone causes the prospect's brain to feel like you're genuinely curious. If I go like this, walk me through, Jim, what type of operations are you building out to scale the company? That sounds like a monotone tone, which sounds like a what? Telemarketer or scripted salesperson, and now your prospect's brain is triggered, right? Fight or flight mode, surface level, sales resistance, the wall goes up. Okay, so you can avoid that by mastering tonality. The second tonality you really have to master. This is an important one. Write this down, especially number 4. You really have to master number 4 here. Number 2 is a confused tone. Now, let me make myself clear. When I say confused tone, I don't mean like you're 106 and you've got dementia, like you're confused about something, like, oh, I don't know how this works. I'm going to use that in certain contexts. So let's say if a prospect says, oh my gosh, you have no idea this XYZ problem, it's so stressful. I might lean in and say, oh, how do you mean by stressful? See, that's like I'm confused. I don't understand what you mean. Hold on, I'm not understanding. How did you mean by stressful? Okay, well, what I mean by that, see, a confused tone in that context triggers their subconscious brain. They don't even know it, but it triggers their subconscious to basically say, oh, he didn't understand what I meant by stressful. I need to expand on that. I need to explain that better. And that's when the emotional doors start to open up, where they actually explain the emotion. Remember? Emotion is what causes the human being to want to buy, not logic, all right? So confused tone. There's so much more to the confused tone that you can use. Hey guys, Jeremy Miner here. Look, a lot of you leave comments wanting me to help you sell more. So the easiest way to get a hold of me, the quickest way, is to text me. So text me right now. It's 480-637-2944. Listen, I started this company to help you learn how to close more deals, but do it the right way. Number 3, a challenging tone, okay? Now, you can't use a challenging tone at the beginning of a sales conversation, whether in person, Zoom, on the phone, because you don't have much trust or credibility. This is only granted further in the discussion. So let's say you're a one-call close with what you sell. Let's say it takes you 30 minutes to sell it. Maybe halfway through, after you've already found out their situation, you've built a gap from where they are to where they want to be. Feel the pain, right? You can be more challenging because now you have more trust with your prospect, more credibility. So you might lean in. This is what's called a consequence question. Let's say if I sold, cars, and I can show you this for every industry on the planet. So and let's say the prospect's problem was their used car's 10 years old and they need a new one because that old car keeps breaking down on their way to work. It's happened a couple of times and they're afraid if it keeps breaking down, they're going to lose their job. Let's just say that's what their problem was. So I'm going to repeat back the problem and the consequence of the problem. So what happens if you don't do anything about this? Your car keeps breaking down. What's going to happen to your job at that point? Now notice I started with more of a challenging tone. Now I can't ask that question right when I meet them. I don't have any trust or credibility. That's further in the conversation. I challenge that because it's a defensive mechanism, because you're getting them to defend themselves on why they have to change their situation. So notice I started with a challenging tone and then voila, what did I end with? A concerned tone. Okay, this is one you really, when I said number 4 is like one of the most important, There's a reason why. A concern tone is a tone that shows empathy. And when the prospect feels like you are concerned for their consequences, do you feel that lowers your status where they lose trust, or do you feel like it raises your status where you gain trust if they feel you're concerned for them, the consequences of not doing anything? Okay, notice how I ended it. What happens to your job at that point? Okay, concern tone, okay? Or I might lean in, and let's say your prospect's not opening up. I might lean in and say, can I ask you something, Sally? Sure, go ahead, Jeremy. And this is off the record. What's really holding you back from moving forward? See, I lowered my tone into that soft tone, okay? A tone that shows empathy. This right here, a concern tone has to be taught. All these tones really have to be mastered. They have to be taught by someone who actually has mastered themselves. If you're role-playing with your spouse, or let's say your cousin, or let's say another salesperson in your company, and you're role-playing tonality and they haven't mastered it themselves, what type of feedback are you going to get? Could be the wrong feedback, right? You see where I'm going with that, okay? And then this tone right here is extremely important. This is a playful tone, okay? Now, why would I use a playful tone? Not to be the class clown, okay? But I want to use a playful tone in certain context to get the prospect to laugh, to let their guard down. So let's say that you're on Zoom, you sell something that's virtual, okay? They show up 7 minutes late, right? And they get on there like, oh, I'm so sorry for showing up late, blah, 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 blah. Let's say if it's an inbound lead. Instead of saying, oh, don't worry, it's okay, you know, no problem, which doesn't really hurt you, but doesn't really help you, I'm going to be in a playful tone like, well, what should I forgive you for showing up late? What are we going to do with you, Barb? Oh, gosh. See, playful tone. Or let's say they get on Zoom with you, or let's say that, you know, you call a lead, an outbound lead, right? And they answer and you start talking and they ask you how you're doing, right? The prospect asks you. Instead of saying, oh, I'm doing great, just working hard, which doesn't really hurt you but doesn't help you, how can I get them to let their guard down? I might say, oh, you know, just trying to stay out of trouble. What about you? Are you getting in trouble over there, Julie? Oh gosh, I'm not getting in trouble. And they laugh. Guard comes down. Now, why? Because it actually releases dopamine in your prospect's brain, which is a disarming technique, which actually gets them to let their guard down. That's why we're using the playful tone. Are you with me so far? Okay, you want me to show you something cool next here? Okay, good. Let's keep going here. Now, this is important right here. These three things. Verbal cues, okay? This is how do you bridge from question to question, okay? Because how many of you have heard a salesperson that ask a question, or maybe it's you, it's okay, and you ask a question, the prospect answers, and then after that, because you don't know what to ask them next, or you're trying to figure it out, you say, okay, cool, gotcha. John, I'm curious. See how scripted that sounds? See, your prospect, their brain starts to pick that up, right? They understand that pattern because that's how most salespeople sound when they're talking. So you have to master how to make the questions feel conversational, like they're talking to their best friend, okay? So verbal cues might be like, what happened next though? Oh, really? But when did you do that? Okay. And see, really? Okay. Those are verbal cues, and you're going to use that right before the next question. So as they're ending their answer, you're like, oh, really? But what happened then? And you just bridge into the next question. Okay. On another training video, I'll show you a lot more of that. Verbal pacing. I talked a little bit about that on some other training videos. How do you pace the question out? Because are you aware that the number one reason your prospects give you vague, generalized, surface level answers from your questions is because you ask them so fast, you give them no time to think deeper and internalize what you just asked. So if I pace the question out, you ever heard of the Martin Luther King, the I Have a Dream speech? How did that start? Did he just talk really fast? Or did he say, I have a dream that one day, see how he paces that out? That little verbal pause there? All men are created. See how he paces that out. Okay, go watch that speech. See how he paces that out. If he just said it really, really fast, you would have never heard of that speech because it would have never triggered any emotions and everybody listened to it. Okay, verbal pacing. And then you have verbal pausing. okay? And I'm going to show you an example of verbal pausing, okay? Now, if you want to get more training like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Just don't share it with your competitors because you don't want them learning what I'm going to show you on this channel, I can assure you. So this is an example of actual verbal pacing by using verbal pauses, okay? That's another writer downer, as I say. Now take a look at this. This is the exact same question. So I can get their brain to focus on what I want them to by using, these are verbal, anytime I do 3 periods here, that means I'm slightly pausing right here, and right here, right before the word I want their brain to focus on. So let's say a prospect gives you some type of reason why they want to change their situation, okay? I can then, this is a probing question, okay, NEPQ probing, right here. I can say, can I ask, like, why is that so important to you now, though? Can I ask why that is so important to you? Now, what did I get their brain to focus on? That thing, whatever, ooh, I don't know what that is. That thing, that's a cool triangle. So whatever that is right there, I might plug that in. So can I ask why higher quality leads is so important to you now, though? See, if I sold for a marketing agency, I'm just going to plug in whatever that thing is. This is just generic here, that. You're just going to plug in the thing and why that is so important. Notice I emphasize the word that, and I verbal pause right before and right after, and their brain thinks of this right here. Now, I'm going to show you the same question. See what I get the brain to focus on here. Why is that so important to you now, though? Now, what is their brain thinking? Timing. Why now? Not that. Now it's now. See, now is right here, but they're more focused on that because I verbal paused right here and verbal paused right here. Now their brain here. Can I ask why that's so important to you now, though? Okay? And now their brain is thinking, why is it important right now, which builds what? Urgency in the sale. Does that make sense? Now, if you have questions on this or how to tie it into your industry, the best way to reach me is just to text me 480-637-2944. I actually locked myself in a conference room right over here about an hour a day with me and a couple of sales trainers, and we actually answer your questions. Hope that helped you. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We love you. Until next time.